In this fifth and final episode of our 5-part Long March series, at long last, we've reached the end of the road. A city called Yan'an, generally considered to be the cradle of China's revolution. Join me on Travelogue for the ultimate red adventure. The Long March, the epic expedition that began in Jiangxi province and snaked across much of the country. With virtually every step, it changed Chinese history. Finally, we find ourselves at the very end of the journey.
G'day from the red capital of China. I'm now in Yan'an in Shanxi province, which is where the Long March came to an end in October 1935 after 1 year on the road and 12,500 kilometers. Now this place is known for being the headquarters of the Chinese Communist Revolution, and people still come here today on pilgrimages to pay respects to the nation's founding fathers and also to see revolutionary landmarks and to see where the new China began. My name is Dui and you're watching the 5th and final episode of our Long March series.
我们延安是真是了不起，举世闻名的革命圣地。 红军长征2万这5000里，落脚就在那大山边。到如今整整的80周年，我说今天就来纪念。
If you were to ask any Yan'an local for tips on where to go in their city, it's very likely that they'll recommend this museum. If you go for a browse inside, it's pretty certain that you'll get a comprehensive understanding of China's modern political history.
This grand grey building is the Yan'an Revolutionary Memorial. It's one of the biggest museums in the country devoted to the revolution, which was effectively launched with the founding of the Communist Party, or CPC, back in 1921. This is a must-see on the Red Tourism Trail, tours of places with links to China's communist past and present.
The route of this museum generally follows the chronological history of modern China, which begins with the end of the Long March in 1935. Now this section that I'm in is dedicated to explaining why Yan'an was chosen specifically as the national headquarters of the revolution.
After the Red Army's main force, led by Mao Zedong, arrived in 1935, other contingents reached Yan'an over the following months, and the Long March officially ended in October 1936. Yan'an would remain the primary CPC base until 1947. It was here that the communist leadership had their headquarters, directing operations in the civil war against the Kuomintang, and later the Japanese invaders. The museum has been educating generations of people since opening to the public in 1951. And I must say, the exhibits are very well laid out.
This is a miniature version of the Yan'an City Wall, and walking into this section of the museum is almost like walking into a time capsule, taking you all the way back into, the 1930s. This model here is probably what Yan'an might have looked like in 1937. Now fast forward a few years, you'll find yourself in this part of the museum, and here it explores when the Red Army actually joined forces with the Kuomintang to fight against an external threat, the Japanese, during the Second World War. And it was during those 8 years that many stories of national pride were actually created.
No sooner were the Japanese defeated than the Civil War resumed. Eventually, with the communist victory in 1949, the People's Republic was founded. Now, see those arches? You'll find these domed designs all over the city. And here is a concentrated cluster of them.
You might be wondering what type of strange building I'm walking around in. Now these are called yaodong, or cave dwellings. And it's a very traditional style of architecture that's local to northern Shanxi, and what I'm standing in is actually a hotel. If you've ever wanted to live in a cave, which I know we all have, this is your perfect chance. And I'm going to show you my little Chinese hobbit hole.
This is said to be the world's biggest concentration of yaodong, accommodation excavated into the hillside.
Welcome to my humble abode. Check it out. This is my living room, and it even comes decked out with a kang, which is a chill little hangout area. And behind me here is my bedroom. It's pretty swish for a cave, isn't it? You know, you can find a few of these hotels in Yan'an, and one characteristic about the yaodong is that they stay cool in the summer, which is nice on a day like today, and warm in the winter. Bet you didn't think that you could see something like this from outside, did you?
Yaodong have a particularly strong association with Yan'an because famously, when the CPC was here, these were where everyone lived. But enough of all that for now. It's time for some exercise. Every single day, morning and evening, people gather in the central square for a bit of a collective boogie with the aid of some serious props. It's a folk dance called Nyuyanga, and it's got its own intangible cultural heritage status. From the sidelines, it looks rather simple, kind of like follow the leader. But of course, as usual, when I join in, I realise it's not quite the case.
It's actually quite tiring for the arm. Woo! Maybe there is a bit of coordination required. And now I'm falling behind!
In fact, there's a pattern to the procession, and quite a lot more stamina involved than I'd expected.
My arm!
Fortunately, this public parade isn't a long march. It's a fun one. Coming up next, jumping right onto the red tourism bandwagon, some sacred revolutionary sites, and a story to stir the emotions.
杨家岭凤凰山，嘿，杨家岭你看八大带上枣园，这里是中国的革命摇篮，小米饭哺育了多少英雄好汉。
Yan'an is home to many of the nation's most significant revolutionary sites, from Chairman Mao's sleeping quarters to the meeting hall where some momentous decisions were taken.
这个就是正为召开党的7大而建的中央大礼堂，它是由刘国学的杨作才设计的，是一座中西合璧的建筑物。它的这个外表当时吸收的是西式建筑风格。如果你走进这个礼堂内部，会发现当时是用我们陕北窑洞的拱形结构设计的。
The hall looks exactly as it did during the Congress held in mid-1945, when the decision was taken to mobilize the masses for the effort to defeat the Japanese. It was also in this room that Mao Zedong was elected chairman of the CPC Central Committee.
Well, it does look like a lot of domestic tourists like coming here to relive that moment in time, or at least, you know, try and imagine what it would have been like being here when such important decisions were being made for the nation that really changed the course of history for China forever. And it's also nice to get out of the heat.
The auditorium is undeniably a must-see on every red tourist's itinerary, and it's not the only building that Yang Zuocai famously designed. The leafy compound we're in is called Yangjialing. It's the site of the old administrative bureau of the Communist Party's Central Committee. Just across the road is the office hall, designed by Yang in the shape of an aeroplane. I'm beginning to understand why people from across the country come all this way to Yan'an. Seeing is believing, right? So perhaps by physically being here, the founding history of modern China becomes much more real. And that, in turn, I guess, gives people's sense of national pride a big boost. After all, the small remote city of Yan'an is, for want of better comparison, modern China's Mecca. People can come here to pay their respects and, perhaps, renew their party allegiance. But that's not to say you can't find some light relief.
You know, every day in Yan'an there's a local musical production that's said to be very compelling, and each day there are 3 shows and all of them are usually sold out, and I'm a massive fan of musicals, so I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm here for the second time slot of the day, and it's undeniably one of the busier places in town. Since its premiere in May 2015, it's been hailed as must-see family-friendly entertainment. I'm definitely glad there's allocated seating. The show is called Yan'an Nursery, and it's set during revolutionary times. It's based on the true story of kindergartens that looked after orphaned children, and children whose parents were away serving as soldiers. It incorporates traditional Shanbei, or Northern Shanxi, performances. And for a small-scale production, it's very impressive. The real Yan'an Nursery was established in 1938, and Mao Zedong's youngest daughter was one of its students. She's actually seen one of these performances, no doubt an emotional trip down memory lane. Of course, it's all in Mandarin, plus the local dialect, like in this scene. But as is often the case with good stage performances, you don't really need to understand the words to enjoy it. It's a tale of separation, sacrifice and love. Love for one's children and one's country. And I love it.
I think它每一个环节都非常好。
是吗？
特别是整个的过程看下来，很多人都掉眼泪了。
啊，
看到那块的时候我哭了。
你哭了？哦 ，definitely very moving.
Well, looks like West End and Broadway had better watch out. Coming up next, marching a little way out of central Yan'an for some audio-visual overload, tallying up the intangible cultural heritage before the home stretch.
朋友们，延安的景致你就看不完，更线还有一些好景点。
I'm now at the Hukou waterfall, which is the largest waterfall in the Yellow River and the second largest in all of China, making it a super duper popular tourist attraction. Now, during rainy season, it's also peak tourist season, and that's because the volume of water is, well, at its peak, and that is right now.
朋友们，延安的水，延安的山，延安的山山水水不一般。
The Yellow River is one of the 2 most famous rivers in China, and it's known for its immense size. But here in Hukou, it's channeled into quite a narrow gully. And the reason why it's called Hukou, which means mouth of the flask, is that it looks a little bit like a teapot. You know, this is the first time I've seen so much brown water in one place. It's a pretty gigantic teapot.
I guess with a bit of imagination, you could also say that the relentless roaring sounds like boiling water, and the clouds of spray look like steam, right? In any case, the enormous volume of muddy water is absolutely hypnotising. My mum's fanatical about waterfalls, so I inherited a bit of the obsession from her, and I just can't seem to tear my eyes away. Oh, also, did you know that we're at the intersection of 2 provinces? To the left of your screen, where we are, that's Shanxi, and on the other side, that's Shanxi. I always get the 2 mixed up as well. Don't worry. Instead, how's this for a surprise?
What I'm seeing right now is a local custom called the Hukou Doubu, or Hukou fighting drums. And it's a performance that's usually done during times of celebration.
Hukou is an ancient dance that's classified as provincial-level intangible cultural heritage. Dou means fight, and gu means drum, which is a pretty apt description of the choreography, don't you reckon? It's like an ear-splitting argument, albeit a civilized, very rhythmic one. There's something really raw about the routine, primal, like it was born from the gorge, and yet refined. It's a breathtaking, heart-pounding scene. The noisy flurry of red, the gentle green slopes of the mountains, and the thundering yellow river. The river's name is derived from its ochre yellow colour, which it gets from the large amount of silt that it carries. It's the 6th longest river on Earth, at 5,500 kilometres. Its basin was the birthplace of Chinese civilization. Now this is a scene that won't leave me for a long time. Next stop, Ansai County, for a very different sort of intangible cultural heritage, a much more peaceful indoor pursuit. I'm checking out an Ansai Jianzhi, or Ansai paper cutting exhibit. Paper cutting is the art of, well, cutting paper, which in China has been practiced for at least 1,500 years. It's geographically divided into a southern and northern style, with Ansai paper cutting belonging to the latter. Paper cuts symbolize luck and happiness. Today, I'm meeting Yu Zeling, a master paper cutter.
老师，安斋剪纸跟别的中国剪纸有什么区别？
安塞剪纸它代表了地方特色，安塞剪纸比较粗犷朴实，剪的不管是手小还是肉啊，它都有非常有动感。安塞剪纸的就是，不按比例剪，想咋剪就咋剪。
可是有一点比较夸张。
哎，对，有夸张的手法。对。
安斋剪纸主要是剪什么的？
安塞剪纸主要就解释民俗生活、12生肖。就是再就是民间故事这些都剪。
是过节才剪的还是？
过节剪的比较多。过节你像剪的就这个贴窗花，就是有时绣花那个剪的那个是就是绣花刺绣的剪纸，就平时也剪，平时剪的平时过节的没有逢年过节剪的多。
然后是用来做什么的？是贴窗
剪纸是。用来就逢年过节贴窗花，再就是结婚的时候贴喜花，再就刺绣时候嫁妆上刺绣都要有剪纸，剪纸把它剪的，就是一样都是剪上才做。
我看到这里很多那些作品都是红色的。
红色的，你看这都是红色，红色是代表喜庆。红色剪纸是代表的喜庆，都是白色；蓝色剪纸的剪纸都是白色，
是单色的。现在还是有很多人喜欢学剪纸吗？
现在许多人都剪，从小孩从上小学就我们的蓝色剪纸进课堂了，上小学就开始剪上。
这么小的开始了。
那
你觉得可以教我吗？
可以，
可以吧
Ms. Yu is the professional paper cutter behind a significant proportion of the works on display, so I'm in safe hands. As I thought, her movements are quick and precise, although depending on the size and detail of the artwork, it can take weeks to complete one.
Yay! 好漂亮。
对。
That took about 2 minutes of her time. It's so pretty and cute. 好可爱 The mascot for Ansai paper cutting. Maybe I can try and do one of these myself. 那你可以教我怎么写吗？
可以，可以。
好
，OK。这个比较快。
Well, here we go. As usual, it's much more difficult than it looks.
就不用先画了，就直接剪。
直接剪。
抽下去。
这一下。 拿锏头，
stabbing this little doll in the eye.
这是个嘴，
这要刺进去。
哎，刺进去，要扎进去。
I feel like I'm doing a bit of an operation here.
对，剪，剪，
剪完了。
剪完了。
Oh, look at hers. Hold on, hold on, hold on. I've got not very good-looking conjoined twin monsters here. But hey, they look happy, right? 我的笑得很高兴。还可以, right? I think I found a new hobby. Just pass me all your scrap paper and I'll make it into tangible cultural heritage.
But wait, we're not done here yet. We're staying in Ansai for something that's even more famous than its paper cutting.
2,000 years ago, here in Ansai, nestled in these hills of northern Shanxi, was a custom, a heart-thumping custom that was brought to life. And because of Ansai's relative geographical isolation, not much of it has changed. So still, 2,000 years later, you can witness this spectacle, much of it in its ancient glory.
So much rhythm and so much red. This is Ansai Yaogu, or the Ansai waist drum, a folk dance that has won multiple accolades all over the world. It's sometimes performed by a cast of thousands. This is a relatively small troupe. Even so, they're all professional dancers, and the power they generate is palpable. The dance incorporates drumming and martial arts movements, initially performed to raise the alarm about an attack, deliver messages, or celebrate victory in battle. Eventually, it evolved from military use into something more symbolic, as a prayer for a good harvest and a celebration during festivals. It's yet another item of intangible cultural heritage on the route of the Long March, but not the last. Because this one is. Surely this soundtrack is recognisable by now. The Shanbei Shuoshu, a northern Shanxi mode of expressive, impromptu storytelling. It's almost like an early form of rap.
三弦一弹就震天响，豪情满怀我开了枪，开口不把别的谈，就想给大家唱唱延安。唱就唱，弹就弹，说书留着大家看延安。
Mr. Tao has been a local Shuoshu artist for 37 years now, and he definitely draws the crowds. Shuoshu is a traditional folk performance that originated during the Song dynasty around 1,000 years ago. Interestingly, it's believed that, at that time, blind people performed it as a means of earning a living. Between verses, Mr. Tao tells me there are 5 factors to be mastered: the voice, the percussion and stringed instruments, memory, the exaggerated emotions and expressions, and ad-libbing. And it's obvious he's the master of masters. Then, lo and behold, a familiar face at the very, very end of the journey.
Oh, dude, you made it. How are you?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
Good, I'm surprised we actually got this.
Yeah, we did. It's been a pretty eye-opening experience, eh?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, before coming out on this trip, I always thought the Long March was, you know, just a name, a bunch of random facts and figures, but I met some incredible people. They told me some amazing stories.
Yeah, well, for me, I reckon it was more the unbelievable landscapes. You know, with the most beautiful places on Earth, often they're also the most treacherous. So I think it gave me a better idea of what the Red Army had to go through. It was a real test of, you know, humanity and strength and perseverance.
Yeah, for sure. Well, plus, you know, the whole trip gave us an insight into the lives of people who live in some of the most remote parts of China.
and an insight into the founding narrative of modern China.
Of course. So I hope you guys at home also learned something from this series.
We sure did.
I'm Turan.
I'm Zoe. Catch you next time.
2年你来看，又是一个绝境的新延安，新延安。